Chris, can you give that to Katie? It's our little article on pet peeves. Pet peeves.
Who is this again?
Archbishop Peter Sartain, who is the Archbishop Emeritus. Sartain. Archbishop Sartain. So, anyway. Screwtape encourages Wormwood to attack his patient's peevishness that is getting easily irritated by unimportant and insignificant things.
This was a fun chapter.
It was fun. And again,
But it rang very true.
It is, of course.
Very true.
All of it rings true.
Yes. Oh, can you give this to Father?
I like your TA.
You know, oh, you didn't leave?
No, I didn't.
Oh,
Where were you?
I'm glad.
I went to the garden and I realized I put it on the wall, so I did that.
Here,
Okay,
you
sit
can read
down.
that. Read it along.
I can bring it.
Give me the key. So we don't forget it. Because then you go home with Mom and then I'm stuck with no. So, anyway. So, one of the things that resonated with me was you go into each day with kind of a preconceived notion of how it's going to be and how it needs to be. And any interruption to that plan can just completely discombobulate. That's one of the things that struck me. Like you go to Montgomery Catholic and then you're told, oh, by the way, we have no subs today. Can you cover? I'm only joking, Justin. All right. So, but that was one of the thoughts that I had was that claim on time. Did you remember that?
Yes.
What's devilish about being irritated by interruptions and intrusions on our time?
Which one you on, number one?
Yeah, that's number one. It's part two of number one. Mm-hmm.
Didn't we do the first question?
Well, the first part is just a statement thing that is getting easily irritated by unimportant.
That's
What's devilish about being irritated by interruptions and intrusions?
Well, I think it's just that concept that the time is ours.
Right.
That was, that stood out.
Right. It belongs to me as to how I'm going to use it. In fact, right, was he? Let him have the feeling that he starts each day as the lawful possessor of 24 hours. Any mom knows that's not a not a not a thing.
I know you get 5 minutes.
Oh, I know, and it's worse if you expect it or hope for it, because then when it doesn't happen, you're like, whoa. So you just have to not expect it.
Right.
She's watching Still Mockingbird.
Oh yeah. I gave her the movie, the DVD.
Okay.
So yeah. Any other thoughts, comments about that? You know, in priesthood, you always have to be open to the fact that your time is truly not your own, right? In many ways. Hospital calls, right? And that, it's one of the things is the fact that everything that we have, we give back to the Lord. My.
It's sacrifice.
Yeah.
People don't always want to do sacrifice.
Right.
Because it's painful. It's hard. That's why a lot of people don't want to have kids either.
Right.
Sacrifice of money, time, efforts, sleep, you name it. You sacrifice it.
Right. How do you respond when events and people intrude on your own plans?
Frustration.
Right.
Well, sometimes it depends on your mindset, I think. Because if you know it's probably not gonna be a fun visit or something, like there's somebody come in and you're not gonna go, you're kind of dreading like maybe they're bringing their dogs or something, and you know it's gonna be chaotic. 'Cause, you know,
Driving in from Mobile.
mhm. But if you expected that it's gonna be a little crazy and you just kind of be prepared and say it is what it is, and you just accept it and just try to focus on the good stuff and not let the other stuff irritate you, then you have a better time. And I can vouch for that. It was much
Right.
better because I didn't dread all the dogs.
Well, even at work, when I feel like my job is the interruptions, like I
Yes.
still feel like I have all these other things I can be working on. And then the phone rings, I'm like,
Yes.
what do you want?
Exactly.
Why are you calling?
Yeah.
No, your kid can't leave. I'm here for late.
But it's true because you're doing this, then ring. And then you get a moment, you're like, okay, I'm gonna catch up on, nope. I don't remember.
And I have to get things off the picture.
Yeah. I know, I've seen you in the split time that I've seen, a little bit of time that I've seen, I'm like,
But we know when I take a moment and I think that like this is the point of my job, is to handle
yeah,
interruptions. The other stuff is really secondary. And
right.
sometimes I have great conversations with, meet people's
Mindset,
grandmas.
right? Things that kind of, can be good. So
Yeah, you actually get to know a lot of the parents and whatnot.
that's great.
So that when I just stop and be like, it's fine if this stuff doesn't get done.
It's okay. Yeah. That's it, mindset.
Right. Right.
There's always tomorrow.
Right.
Hopefully.
Now you will have noticed that nothing throws him into a passion so easily as to find attractive time, which he reckoned on having at his own disposal, unexpectedly taken from him. It is the unexpected visitor, when he looked forward to a quiet evening, where the friend's talkative wife. I love that. I thought that was so funny.
I take offense.
It throws him out of gear.
I wonder if it's learning from experience.
I think he was. Honestly, I thought that because for so many years of his life he was single, had no kids, had no had nobody who had nobody had a claim, nobody was depending on him in any kind of direct way. So he probably was able to get into that mindset on how, yeah, you could see how he's able to order his days pretty much however way he wants. Oh, I'm going to go hang out with Tolkien and we're going to go smoke our pipes and have our ale and read our stories. Whereas if he was married and had 3 kids at home, his wife would have been like, oh, no, you're not. You're going to be at home tonight.
Maybe he showed up to talk to Tolkien and Tolkien's wife.
Yeah. Right. Right. From a Christian perspective, what is wrong with a personal sense of ownership?
I think we're all like we're taught that like everything is really God's. and
Right.
not our own.
Right.
So when you start thinking that stuff is your own, then you're kind of like losing sight of God.
Right.
That it all comes from him too.
Right. Pointing everything upwards, you're taking it all into yourself.
Right. Right. The sense of Father touched on this last week. Remember, he was, my, like the theme that my, and when you start thinking that way, you hoard it for yourself, right? Whereas, what does Paul say? I am not my own. I'm not, I belong to Christ. St. Peter says the same thing.
Well, when they talk about, not to jump ahead, maybe they'll talk about it.
Right.
But when they talk about the my God and the my stuff, that's one I get so frustrated sometimes when people say things like, well, my God would never like let people suffer, or my God wants everyone to be happy. You know, like, and I feel like it's so bold of people to like put God in a container and make it just what they want it to be. But
Mhm. Right.
Yeah.
And one of the things that the notion of my, like it says, right? It's a reduction of the thing that you're claiming to that of a thing. So even your faith in God can become an idol in a paradoxical way, right? Which is the most distressing of all idols. And when you think, you do it, you think I'm doing the right thing, but it's not God that you're after. It's like the Pharisee when he thanks God that he's not like this sinner, this publican. But the text says, it doesn't say, and praying to God, he said, I thank you, God, that I'm not like this man. It says, and praying to himself. Praying to himself. He said, I thank you, God, that I'm not like this man.
Mhm.
That's very disconcerting. Was he aware that he was praying to himself? Maybe. I don't know. Pope Benedict had a quote on that. Let me see if I can find it. Pope Benedict the 16th on my God and your God. He had a great line about our Lord. Right. In his introduction to Christianity, Benedict kind of touches, Father Ratzinger at the time touches on this notion of the Our Father, and it's the Our Father, not my Father, for a reason, because no one can claim God as his own personal property, right? So, how would your attitude toward life be different if you cultivated a sense of time and possessions that would be more pleasing to God than to the devils?
I think, like I said, if you cultivated a sense of time that's more pleasing to God, then you're open to whatever is going to happen in your life.
Right.
You're open to whatever circumstances come about, even if they're negative, because you're like, well, this is what was meant. This is how God allowed it for a reason. So if you accept it, rather than, why did my heater have to go out, and then my car breaks, and then this happened and this happened. Why did all this have to happen? It happened for a reason, and what can we learn from it? Rather
Right.
than, it shouldn't have happened. My day was planned out. Everything went wrong. But then you're just going down this whole hole of despair.
Right.
So I think that is what it does. When you want it to be your way, then, or your time to be the way you thought it would be, and it's not, then you can get just in despair or
Yeah.
your circumstances. And wasn't it Paul that said, in all circumstances we should be content?
Yeah.
And I think that not making an owner of your time and an owner of your circumstances allows you to be content with whatever it is, whatever comes. Doesn't mean you don't make decisions, but you just
Right.
accept it.
Father Dwight Longenecker, who's a priest of the Diocese of Charleston in South Carolina, he is a third order Benedictine. He's a diocesan priest, but he's like a he's third order. He's not. But he wrote a book about taking the Benedictine rule and applying it to family life. Do you remember that?
No.
when he spoke. Remember when he saw?
I remember when he spoke, but I didn't know it was taking the Benedictine.
And he said the Benedictine rule is actually very practical because it's based on ora et labora,
Oh.
and each part of the day is measured out. Like, we're going to pray now, and now we're going to work. Now we're going to recreate. In many ways, wouldn't you say seminary life has kind of a Benedictine push, even in non-Benedictine seminaries, right? There's recreation. So, hey, we want you to shoot the basketball. We want you to run, right? Yeah. Like, we're going to have, and by following this pattern, the idea being you find that you are able to be more free. You have time.
In fact, you seem to be the person who went to prayer often and missed recreation or work. That is a very big issue.
Right.
Information. You'll be like, I don't need them.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you have to be in recreation, you have to be working, you have to be in prayer, you have to do studies. Like, that has to balance.
Right.
Even if you do feel like going to recreation, you just have to do it slowly by slowly. Learn how to adjust into this prayer, work, study, everything. So that's what.
Yep. Right.
Which I feel like when you think about it that way, it would be so beneficial to like your life is a peer piece, you know. And even to saying things like when it's your off day, like, no, I cannot because I need to rest, you know.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
That's very wise.
Well, and that was Father Dwight's point in the book, like applying that to family life, and that you wind up balancing life. You're balancing life. Like there's this. It's like riding a bicycle, right? It's always going out of tension, but by having this reality, you're able to ride the bike. Well, you're putting these things that are in tension a lot of times, work life with home life, with prayer life. But then when you actually put some kind of order and structure to it, you discover that you can do it. And what do people always say about their prayer life? Beginning of the year, I always ask the seniors about prayer life. And they always say, yeah, I just don't have enough time. Right? And everybody just said, I don't have enough time. You always ask people that. And then when you actually ask people to break their day down, they have a heck of a lot more time than they realized. It's just that they squandered much of that time.
Yeah. And technology really, it makes you oblivious to the fact that you're squandering it. I mean, at least when we were kids, the TV would be on, your parents would be like, turn
Right.
it off, that's been all. But,
You got one show, two shows, or you got one show, you did your homework, and then you could watch a show. Right.
There was one technology in one room.
Right. There was, right. Yeah.
Well, and you didn't have 24 hours of like appropriate television. You know, like it started at
Yes.
5 and then it was like news and then prime
Right.
time.
Right. And it's like, kids go to bed.
Yeah.
Right. You got one show or two shows, two 30-minute
So much
shows or
better, I
whatever.
think. I feel
But now
like
you could literally just binge watch.
Why not?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's always calling for our time.
Right.
But,
So,
yeah.
okay, Father, just a little background on this. This handout is from when he was the Bishop of Little Rock. His name is Peter Sartain. He was the retired Archbishop of Seattle. He retired in 2019. He was the Bishop of Little Rock, and then in 2006, I can't remember where he went. He went somewhere else. And then in 2010, Pope Benedict sent him to Seattle, and then in 2019, he retired. But this was an article that he wrote, and I thought it really worked well with this notion of peevishness. So that's why I printed it up and gave it out, because I found it to be relevant, right? It's like we all have these pet peeves, these things that kind of provoke us. We could be having a great day, but like he's talking about, you're driving on the road and everybody's a maniac when they drive. Why don't they drive like I do? I do that. I have a son that does that too. Not him. My son, Nick. Certain instances draw out the worst in me, though my initial reaction is to point the blame elsewhere. That's usually the way it works with a pet peeve. Pet peeves raise my ire, get my dander up, make me clench my fist, or throw my hands up in frustration. There are those annoying imperfections I observe in the world around me, which, in my estimation, just shouldn't be there. Often my pet peeves have to do with things that keep happening or people who keep behaving the same way, even though I've already expressed my disagreement. Right? My pet peeves can even cause me to give an impromptu lecture on what I learned in school. An early morning pet peeve can ruin a whole day. Right? And it just goes on to talk about how those things can sap our spiritual strength and they can affect us. And then we have to put those things in perspective, and which is basically what he says at the end on the second page. You know, so just keeping that in mind. I thought that was good, kind of to give us a good sense of perspective. All righty. So, all right, now on to letter. What would you?
No, I thought that was good what he said, that when he wrote, when I insist on everyone else being reasonable, as I define reasonable, I become the most unreasonable.
That's where my eyes.
It's so true, that's where mine were too.
Right.
And it's so true. That's very good. I can't wait to finish reading that. All right.
Right. You know. All right. Letter 22.
Oh, this was good.
Oh, he was very upset.
Mhm.
He was very upset about the patient meeting such a wonderful young lady. Of course, he does not think she's wonderful. My dear Wormwood, so your man is in love, and in the worst kind he could possibly have fallen into. And with a girl who does not even appear in the report you sent to me. So, what doesn't Screwtape like about the new love of Wormwood's patient? Not a thing, right?
He doesn't like anything good about him.
Full of good qualities.
Mhm.
Right. She has a healthy and balanced approach to things. Because if you remember back early on, he, skew over here, skew, have him be on the right, have him be on the left, but never have him be in the middle. Have him be extreme.
Yeah. I thought it was funny. I called her a two-faced little cheat.
Hmm.
I know
Right.
the sort who looks as if she faints at the sight of blood, and then she dies with a smile. I love that. I thought of some of the saints that died,
Yeah.
They took their suffering so well. And I know that makes the devil so mad.
Right. Right. I think that's the Office of Readings for Saint Agnes, I think. Something like that. How, because she was like a mere child, and yet she was such a martyr, such a strong martyr. How about this? He's a hedonist at heart. So Screwtape calls God a hedonist. Of course, God is not a hedonist, but he perceives him as such, doesn't he? And I do think it's a fair question to ask. Why would Lewis put this on the lips of the devil?
Yeah, that was interesting.
You know,
You have to get into his.
Right.
like,
How the
who-
devil
who
would
he would
perceive.
think.
And I think it's a fair thing, if you're the devil, to think of God being this way. You think in terms of the early heresies in the New Testament, in early Christianity, all of them were directly tied to some form of Gnosticism, some variation of Gnosticism. Whether it was a Gnosticism that was Epicurean driven, eat, drink, and be merry, it doesn't matter, tomorrow you die, to being a Stoic Gnosticism, which tended to be the body is bad, it brings no good purpose to the spiritual realm, so therefore deprive it. The Epicurean would say the body is bad, that's true, it doesn't bring any value to the spiritual, indulge it, deny it, it doesn't matter. They didn't say to indulge it, they just said it didn't matter, right? All of them and all the variations thereof, all of them are a denial of the body, the sensate realm, that somehow that's beneath God. The first main heretic, Marcion, that's what he argues, right? That's what he argues, right? Bad God, Old Testament, good God, Jesus, New Testament, right? And, think in terms of how our non-Catholic friends view us, because, as Catholics, we have strict religious orders, and yet we have Hilaire Belloc famously saying, hey, wherever the Catholic sun doth shine, what do I find? Laughter and good red wine. It's both and in Catholicism, isn't it? Sometimes it's the strictness of the monk, and sometimes it's the laughter of the layman. And it's all Catholic, Whereas I think there's a piety. Lewis also famously said it's a dangerous thing for a Christian to think he's more spiritual than God. So, for example, for us as Catholics, material things, like we had Mass just a while ago. What did we do? We lit the candles. It's an uneventful Monday night Mass. And here we are taking time, like, why are we lighting candles? Who cares? No, because it matters. The vestments get put on, bread and wine gets brought out. All of that stuff matters. But to a spiritualist, matter doesn't matter. And so you can't have a spiritual experience through matter, which for Catholicism is heresy, because the sacraments have to have matter. So, I mean, it's a whole different way of viewing the world. Have you ever seen the movie Babette's Feast?
Yeah.
Slow.
But good.
Have you seen it, Father? You've heard of it? It's one of Arlene's favorite movies, and Bishop Barron likes it. The way he describes it is very Catholic. He's right. It's a very Catholic. Bishop Barron's how would you say, appraisal of it, it's very Catholic. So it's woman Babette, right? She wins the lottery. Again, another Catholic thing that a Catholic might be inclined to do. Our non-Catholic friends do it, but they hide it, okay? Like package stores. So anyway, so what happens is Babette, she wins this money, and she wants to have a feast for her local people, and they're like non-Catholic. One's a Lutheran, one's a Calvinist, and she's just a simple Catholic woman, nothing great about her. And she basically takes her winnings and she pours it into throwing this absolutely lavish feast, like over the top. And the people that were there at first, right, they're all grumpy and cranky. But then before long, what happens? Eventually, they come together, life. And so Bishop Barron's point is it's got Eucharistic overtones, right? So Babette is kind of a godlike figure. She's inviting the people. She pours all that she has into this gift, this feast. People are kind of unappreciative, cranky, grumpy at first, but then over time, what happens? They're formed and remade. Thus the movie. Now that I just ruined it for you.
Well, there's a lot in it.
I mean, there's a lot in it.
There's a lot.
It's a lot. It's a slow moving movie. It takes a little while to get to where it wants to go. Right. But that's kind of the image of it, right? It's a very Catholic way, as Bishop Barron points out, it's a very Catholic way of viewing the world. And in fairness, an Orthodox way too, where we don't see the material things of the world. We don't see a nice red wine or any of these things as an interruption to the spiritual, but a means by which we can experience the spiritual, which is, I think, what Lewis is getting at when he has Screwtape call God a hedonist. Anybody think of it that way too?
Well, also, I think where you said about calling God a hedonist, I read in this one section made me think about it.
Mm-hmm.
This hedonist is like pleasures, right?
Right.
But God gives us pleasures and not necessarily bad. For example, there are things for humans to do all day long without his minding in the least. Sleeping, washing, eating, drinking, making love, playing, praying, working. Everything has to be twisted before it's any
Yes.
use to us, to the devil.
Yes.
So
Amen.
it's all good. God gives us good things.
Mm-hmm.
And, but then it's twisted, like even on, I tell this to my kids a lot. Because you don't want to give the message to your kids, sex is bad, because it's not. But it's twisted, because on TV, it's used. People are used. And they use that, rather than it being the gift that God gave it to the spouse.
Right.
That brings forth life. So it's all twisted. So now we got the world that tells you children are to be avoided at all costs, and if you can't, you kill them. It's just such a twisted worldview now. That unless you want the child right, it's not a good thing.
Right.
But even food and everything can be bad, right? Like, oh, you can't eat that. That's too much fat and too much good stuff in it, right?
Right.
Well, you can in moderation. You can enjoy it. But if you're always told that's bad for you, that's bad, that's bad, that's bad, then it's like,
right.
But it's not. It's gluttony that's bad. Making
Right.
a nice chicken and nice lasagna, that's not bad. It's being gluttonous. And so that's what I was thinking, that God is a hedonist. He likes us to eat and drink and enjoy nature and go
Right.
places and see things and love people.
Right.
But the world twists it.
Offering it all back to him.
Yeah.
That's what he said. Letter 9, he said, never forget that when we are dealing with any pleasure in its healthy and normal and satisfying form, we are in a sense on the enemy's ground. I know we have won many a soul through pleasure. All the same, it is his invention, not ours. He made the pleasures.
Right.
All our research so far has not enabled us to produce one. All we can do is to encourage the humans to take the pleasures which our enemy has produced, at times, or in ways, or in degrees, which he has forbidden.
Right. Right.
You got it right there. It's all tied back together.
All tied back together. Yep. Exactly.
Because Adam and Eve, what did they have in the garden? Pleasures.
Right.
Tasty food. Beautiful animals to look and enjoy. Each other.
Right.
Nothing was bad.
Right.
Till sin came in.
Right.
Also, the greatest pleasure is God. Like, gives us the greatest joy. So, like, the devil wants us to focus on the other joys so that we have less happiness in the end. He doesn't want us
That's
to have-
true. Distraction.
Right.
Like, he doesn't want us to have happiness. Where God does. That's-
Right. Right.
That's good.
The highest good
That's a good point.
and the source of all goodness.
Right. It all comes from God.
Screwtape clearly thinks that the holiness of the woman's family has an infectious stink. How would you describe the woman's family?
Honey, like my dishes this afternoon with Juliana.
Yeah.
The dishes were fresh and clean. And I opened
She
the
was
door,
cranky when she got
She
home.
was cranky. She was tired. I could tell because with the dishwasher, everything's fresh and clean. But her stinky dog walks by. She goes, "Oh, those dishes stink." I'm like, "What? They're clean." I said, "Maybe your dog stinks."
All right.
Yeah, so when I was reading that, I thought that was interesting that he was not just annoyed with this girl, but he was annoyed that when this guy goes to visit her, he's surrounded by all these people that are good and,
Right.
everything, even the gardener, like everybody's been touched by the enemy.
The whole place reeks of the deadly odor. The very gardener, though he has only been there 5 years, is beginning to acquire it. Even guests, after a weekend visit, carry some of the smell away. The dog and cat are tainted with it. Not in our house.
Not our dog.
Mm. I think there's a lot of truth in that, right? The domestic church, the family, being raised. And that's always one of the struggles too. You raise your kids, you want them to want the things you raise them with. And yet the risk of they go out on their own to make their decision. You know. And that's always going to be the challenge.
No, I found an interesting thought about the whole, when he was saying about the family, and it's rubs off on all the. I think that in the Catholic Church, they encourage us to have our, what is it, the domestic, what's it called? Domestic church?
Yeah, the domestic church. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that some people do that is they might have crucifixes in their homes.
Right.
They might even put up a holy water fountain
Right.
at the entrance. They might have holy pictures or statues, or who knows. Everybody's going to be different. Some people don't have much of that. Some people have it all over their house. Like, remember Mark Crum?
Mark.
I have to admit, I was a little scared when I went in there.
Mark's got the reliquaries.
That's not all. He had this big statue of Jesus laying on.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, it's Mark.
Yeah, it was weird.
Mark.
But he loved it. He goes, I just can't get rid of it. I just love it. Okay. So it's just Mark. But I mean, I know that that's something that people that aren't religious, that don't have those religious things in their home, they might walk into maybe our home or a home like that. They're like, we got a Mary picture, we got waterfall, we got crucifixes. You see those signs of
Right.
things. Like you walk into church, you see it. You might see it in people's homes. And I think that's that sense that some people might get when they walk in and say, kind of like, there's something religious going on here.
Would they know that you are religious by walking into it?
Right.
That is a question.
Right. Yeah, it's one of
and a lot of homes you don't see it, but you know what they love by what you see in there, but you don't always see the religious touch of it.
Yeah.
And some people are very quiet about their faith, so they may not want to.
Archbishop Brody says that when he was a kid, the memorare prayer was on the bathroom mirror. You'd be brushing your teeth or shaving.
Okay, that's good.
Well, so we moved to New Mexico like during COVID, so we didn't know it. So it was a while before like the kids could start going to a friend's house. And so the first time, and Michaela was at a Catholic school, so we kind of assumed that she was with kind of good people. And the first time I brought her to her friend's house, and I noticed the 20 CMB, 20
Oh, the number
on the door frame.
Yeah.
So it kind of just seeing that on the door frame gave me like comfort, bringing her to this person's house.
Yes.
Right. Okay, these are people who actually
Yeah.
have a sense of these things, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And to other people, it'd be like, that's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Did you see that statue of Mary in the front?
Them Catholics. Those idolaters. Right. What's the old joke about the kid who shows up at the Catholic school for the first time about the, hey, what's with that guy on that on the plus sign? He wasn't good in math. You're like, what? I heard Father Crucci tell that joke. I don't.
I never
yeah.
heard that. That's
So
funny.
I don't know. I don't know. Anyway, I want to kind of touch on what you said before, Chris, about the twisted. While he is on a rant, Screwtape goes after both music and silence. How have music and silence been a means of pleasure and grace to you? Music and silence, how I detest them both. How thankful we should be that ever since our Father entered hell, though longer ago than humans, reckoning in light years could express no square inch of infernal space and no moment of infernal time has been surrendered to either of those abominable forces, but all has been occupied by noise. Noise, the grand dynamism.
It's so true about how like we're so bombarded and stimulated all the time, to keep like with distractions. Like sometimes I feel like there's so much background noise that you don't have a moment to think about what you should be doing or redirecting your thoughts. And sometimes you don't realize it until you're in silence. And I was like, then I was driving and I'm like, man, I've driven 20 minutes in complete silence and it has not bothered me at all.
Right.
That's so good,
Right.
right?
Yeah, but you don't like. I didn't mean to do it. It's just the music was turned down, and I didn't. And I was like, oh, it's kind of nice. It's so hard. Even in my prayer life, I struggle with the silence and the listening. I feel like it always needs to be me talking.
Yeah.
Right. Cardinal Sarah has a good book on that, on silence. And touching on what you're saying about how, life just throws a lot of noise at your way. Literal noise and just the figurative noise of the work. Oh, we got this, got that. Just constant busyness.
And in our culture, we always feel this pressure that we should be doing something. If you're doing nothing, well, you're being unproductive. Like, what should I be doing now, But I love silence, and I've learned more about silence through my holy hours and when there's adoration. When they were little, and I was homeschooling them, we had a Friday holy hour. What time was it? At noon? I think it was noon to 1. Because I always make sure I fed them before I went, because if not, we have grumpy toddlers, or grumpy little kids. But it was at Queen of Mercy. Yeah, it was at Queen of Mercy when they had them. And so we had Friday at noon, and I would bring him and Juliana. And I had another friend that homeschooled at sometimes would join us. I can't remember that one. Anyway, but it wasn't always quiet. But they were learning, like, this is where we're quiet and we're just thinking about Jesus and stuff. And then of course they ended up going to school. But then now I have holy hour every Monday, and sometimes Wednesdays we'll have a youth group. We'll have the
Adoration.
And it's just weird because I don't realize how much I love silence until I have it. When I have it and I'm taking, I'm like, oh my gosh, I can pray for this person. All these things just come to your mind that you just don't have time to think about when you're like music and moving and driving and going here. I just feel like if we have more silence, it would be really good for us. At different times of the day. It doesn't have to even be a full hour. Like you said, that 20 minutes. It's just quiet and calm. It's good. And I think the more we have it, the more we'll crave it.
This is a quote from Cardinal Sarah in an interview that he gave about the book. Being silent with our lips is not difficult. It is enough to will it. Being silent in our thoughts is another matter. That's profound. So he says, true silence is not mere passivity, but a positive reality which leads to an encounter and communion with Christ. And it goes on. But it's very powerful. One of the thoughts that I had about music and how music is good. And yet music has been in many ways twisted, right, for its own end, right? So you listen to a lot of the lyrics and you go, ugh, I don't like that. And some of the beats of the music, and you go, that's probably not healthy. That's not good. And one of the things that there was a guy that used to work at Catholic named Arnold Stringer. You remember him, Chris?
He
Remember?
replaced me.
It's right, he did. So you never really got to meet him, too.
No, because yeah, he came in.
Go figure.
He taught in my class one day when we were kind of interviewing him. And,
Right.
And then but I saw him like the first year I was back because that was the first year he wasn't here. So it's like we.
Right.
But that's why I kind of recognized it.
Right. Arnold loved music. He loved music. But one of the things he and I were talking about, but he would always talk to the kids about the dangers of rap music. You know, he came from that world of, you know, he had an interest in it. He had a chance to maybe go places in it, and then he got out of it and said, I don't want this, and here's why. And he would talk to the kids about positive music, like, this is what we want. We want this. And he would give reasons why. But one of the things that we were talking about is that music, in many ways, is the speech of heaven. It's the speech of the angels. The angels sing. Glory to God in the highest, right? They sing. And so if the speech of heaven is song, then in a fallen world, wouldn't the devil take that song and twist it to his own end? Thus, this love, most powerful force in the world, used improperly, can bring great destruction because it's been twisted, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why music has such a provocative effect on us. You know, when one of the days before one of the football games, the kids would get to pick their songs. So they were complaining. Now, I don't ever pay. They could be talking about heaven only knows what, and I have no idea what's being said because I can't even hear. You know, so I don't know. And I'm babbling, talking to somebody on the sideline. I don't know what's going on. But one of the students was complaining, and I overheard her complaining, and she was mad at Mrs. Aaron. And I said, well, what are you upset about? Oh, they won't approve the song. So, well, what's the song? They give me the name of the song. So I plug it in on the computer. And I said, you don't want that song played, do you? And then immediately they got sheepish and said, no, Mr. Riello, not the whole song, only this little part. You know, I'm like, good for Mrs. Aaron. Don't play that song, right? But they're so desensitized to it. It's just so normal for them that, you know, when she mentioned the song or whatever, and she realized I put it in, she got, you know, like, oh, no, yeah, it's not the best. But why do you want that?
Right.
You know?
Well, it's almost like they don't even, like, if you would ask them to read the lyrics out to Mrs. Aaron, they would never want to do that.
Never do it.
Then they would be so embarrassed, and I'm like, that tells you that it's not
right.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and I do think that there's a sense in which, right, what we put into our mind and our heart it's going to affect us. It is, you know, it is. I'm not blaming all our ills on pop culture, because I do think there's a kind of chicken and an egg reality there. But nonetheless, I do think that one of the reasons, these wonderful pleasures that God has given us, then because of the fall, can get distorted and put out of perspective. So, any thoughts, comments, and observations as we wrap up?
So I don't understand, like at the end where it says, here's MS breaks off.
Manuscript.
Oh, I see.
The handwritten manuscript, because it's all handwritten.
So how is it like? So is this like from here on out, where he switches to or was it kind of saying like the devil, like Hornwood was just, or whoever, Screwtape was just done with it? Like, why did he switch?
That's why it seems like he's like transformed into a caterpillar.
Because he
Yeah,
got
right.
so, right, because he got so like frustrated in the heat of conversation. I kind of inadvertently allowed myself to assume that in the water.
Yeah. Inadvertently.
Right. Reminded me of like.
Oh, it's okay,
Wonder-
okay, I think that's a play on the, I think that's part of the dramatics of the story, don't you think?
That's why I assumed that.
In the heat of the composition, I find that so it's written in a different hand because like you said, he turned into a centipede, I think, yeah, a large centipede. In the heat of composition, I find that I've inadvertently allowed myself to assume the form of a large centipede. I am accordingly dictating the rest of my secretary, so it's written in a different hand. Yeah, I think it's just part of the story, like kind of, look how upset I am,
Yes,
that I
no,
can't even
I
write my own. I can't even write it myself.
And it says that some rumor of it has reached the humans in the story account appears in the poet Milton. So
Ah, okay.
Mhm.
it's like he's Lewis is including this thought about how
Yeah.
the devils
Right.
change form.
Okay. Isn't that interesting?
Do you know what that Milton that is referring to is? No.
Milton, I've heard of him.
John.
But do you know the piece that he's referring to?
Paradise Lost, I would think, right?
I'm not. That's
Yeah.
not my stuff.
Yeah. That's what I assumed. That's what I assumed.
Okay, I'm out of my element here. There's no numbers.
All right, let me just see what they say.
Signed toad pipe.
The secretary.
Okay.
For his abysmal sublimity under Secretary Screwtape. Yeah, that's I saw it as Milton Paradise Lost. Right. The famous, right? Better to hey Deke, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. Yeah, I was planning on it.
Martin Luther King.
That's all right. Yeah.
I think we have. I'm gonna have basketball games.
Okay.
It's a national championship game.
It's all right. All right. All right.
No class.
All right. We'll do no class. We won't do a class.
Is it, Ohio State versus
Ohio
Notre
State.
Dame?
Yeah, Ohio State versus Notre Dame. Well, it's now it's in the final two.